We run this city. Na, 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 na. Is that a song? Yeah, it's gotta be a song, right? Let's see. Insta, we run this city. Na, 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 na.
Find a Planet Fitness near you for $1 down, $15 a month. Cancel anytime. Deal ends January 30th.
Bun Mama makes the best PB&J ever.
Bon Maman Concord Grape, made simply with love.
If you see me in the park and I'm holding up my phone, don't act like you don't know I'm playing Pokemon Go. I'm traveling my city, I'm a trainer on the go, Pokedex looking pretty. I'm going hunting those.
I don't know if that was that. And let's see if this is not on my Instagram. Okay. So it's saying streaming for some reason. Good morning, everyone. All right, we're going to take you off. Okay. I think we're live. That was a jam, though. I do need to find where that song is, though. And am I allowed to play music on streaming if that's like a copyright thing? We're easing into today, people. So let me write down the topic that we're going to talk about so if people joining can know. Siblings 101. Man, I get a lot of comments on my videos about my handwriting, that I have great handwriting. And then when I look back, I'm like, it's not looking too good. Let's try again. There we go. Much better. By Codependency Kate. Yay. I think I do need a title every time. Welcome to Class with Kate. This is Codependency Kate. Today we're doing Siblings 101. Let's touch down on yesterday real quick. Yesterday, I talked about emotional neglect, and I couldn't think of the thing that this was, where I was trying to explain the Chinese something, and it was the Chinese finger trap. I'm not able to see comments yet when people are commenting. Hopefully that's getting fixed today, and I'll be posting on Instagram also, going live there soon as well. And so anyway, yeah. So Class with Kate. I'm Codependency Kate. I'm helping you. And what am I doing? I'm taking you to school on all things restoring relationships. That's the line. You got it. Okay. I'm going live every Tuesday, Wednesday, and then starting next week, Thursday at 10:30 a.m. Okay, so not tomorrow. Let's write this down too. Live every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at 10:30 a.m. Central Time. I wonder where everybody is and what time zone you're in. I'm always curious. So it's not tomorrow, because tomorrow is my last class. I've been doing a class this month on overcoming your inner estranged parent. So that's been going really well. I've done it every Thursday for 4 Thursdays. Tomorrow is the 4th Thursday. So is it a little blurry? I think so. No, it's not. Okay. Anyway, so tomorrow's my last class. That's been going really well. I'm not going to do formal private classes anymore because I'm doing this. This aligns more with my values. So starting next week, starting February, every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday morning, 10:30 Central. Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and then Instagram as well. I will be going live talking about whatever, talking about a lot of what I post about, and maybe also like responding to other videos. I'll do calls sometimes. I'll respond to comments sometimes. So basically, you never know what you're going to get every Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday at 10:30 Central. So even though you know that that's happening, you might forget. So if you want to subscribe, like I have events on Facebook that you can like join, and so you can get notified. On YouTube, Twitch, I think you have to subscribe to get notified. And then Instagram, I think you have to like, maybe that's something in your notifications. I don't know. That if you want to get notified of when we go live here. I dream of this being an interactive situation where I'm teaching something, then I go to the chat. I cannot do both. That's what I've learned about myself. I cannot do both things because I will literally, it's like I feel new to planet Earth every time I'm talking about something. I get off track by like, because I read the chat and then I come back. It's like I'm a new baby and I don't know anything. So we're going to have to figure that out. Let me see. So today we're doing siblings. I was going to make this like a bigger conversation and relate it to some other things, but I think as of right now, we're going to keep this to be just about siblings. And in particular, I got a comment the other day. All right, so Siblings 101, you get it? I got a comment the other day, and I'm going to write this here. And I was going to respond to the comment, but I think I'm learning that because this is such sensitive family information, I need to just like screenshot the comment and leave people's usernames out of it. So I should have kept the title, Siblings 101. And this was the comment. I think my sister has borderline personality disorder or BPD. And I'm so excited to talk about this today because sibling issues, I think, out of everything are like the most complex, and they require the most emotional intelligence. If you can understand where your sibling is coming from, have compassion for them, and have boundaries as an adult, I think that's like peak maturity and peak emotional intelligence. Having compassion for your sibling, not siding with your parent in their relationship with your sibling. That's a big one. In fact, siding with your parent when it comes to your sibling, to me, is a huge marker of dysfunction. So when we go to this comment, I feel like this is a very common feeling. Like, I think my sibling has a major issue. Of course, that's like the most common thing in the world. What did this come on? I feel like, let me find the video I was even talking about where this came out. Let's go find it. Hold on a second. This really matters. Let's see. I think my sister. How are you guys doing, by the way? Here we go. Oh, I found it. Oh, it was actually, okay. So this was actually a comment from one of the videos I posted. I don't know if it was my Facebook, but it definitely is on my Facebook about siblings. And the question was, so if one child in a family is estranged, Does that mean all of the other siblings are dysfunctional? That was the question. Oh, such a good question. Somebody asked that on Facebook, actually, and I answered it in a video. And again, the question is, so if one child is estranged, does that mean that everyone in the family system is dysfunctional? And my short answer was yes. Yeah. Yes. Yes. Now, the levels of dysfunction are different. The way that it expresses itself is different. This is not a shaming thing. I'm not saying this as like, oh yeah, everybody's just as messed up. Everybody's the problem. Like, we're not going that direction with it. But if one person is estranged, they're typically, scapegoated. Do we know that word, scapegoated? AKA blamed for all of the family's issues. Scapegoating means you blame someone for the entire system. And so that's essentially what we see online a lot with estranged parents in particular, is their estranged child is the problem in the family, in the world. Like they're the problem. Well, there's one problem and it's this child. That's what scapegoating, that's how I see it, at least online, is the child is scapegoated as the problem. The child that estranges is scapegoated. Now, I don't know where this commenter was coming from with this comment. And I think we're going to address that in a second. But I want to go back to elaborating a little more on when one person estranges. What's your role as a sibling? What's your role as the parent? Because they're different. That's like siblings 101. The 101 of being a sibling is that you are at a different position in the family than the parent. All right, we're doing a heterosexual family here. We'll do 2 siblings. How about that, to keep it simple? Remember, when we do a family tree, we need to remember, and this matters just for you to know, this is called a genogram. This is a family tree. Female, male. Females are circles, males are squares. Okay, this is a genogram. This is a clinical tool. When I'm helping people understand their families, we do this. This is a genogram. Genogram. Mother, father, sister, brother. Okay? So, when we're talking about siblings and we're saying maybe the sister, I don't know, should we do brother, sister, whatever? What's more like stereotypical? So we'll say the sister is estranged. And what this looks like is like, so her relationships is estranged. Okay. I don't even think that's the right thing. I should probably brush up on my genogram signs, you guys. Sorry. Okay. So in this family system where the sister is estranged, does the brother have dysfunction? Yeah. When we're talking about estrangement, there's all forms of it. There's all flavors of it, right? There's all like kinds of estrangement, from just like emotionally estranged, where you're constantly in conflict or you're avoidant and distant. We think of like attachment issues. That falls under estrangement. And then all the way to like no contact, right? So the daughter is openly estranged. So we'll just say she's no contact. The daughter is no contact with the parents. Is the brother as dysfunctional? Yes. Does that mean that he is also estranged? No. Okay. Internal dysfunction, family dysfunction, like on the inside, does not necessarily match behavior. We need to separate those two things, insides and outsides. I've heard a lot that like, oh my gosh, I can't stand my parents, but we're not estranged because I need childcare. Because I want them to have a relationship with my kids. Like we hear that a lot, so we're not defining estrangement by the behavior. We're talking here about the insides. So are the insides dysfunctional in the brother? Yeah. Yeah. And when we say dysfunctional, we don't necessarily mean that like it means doomed. It means this is a fixed thing. No, we're not meaning that at all. We're just meaning that the insides are not conducive to emotional health and relational health. That's what I mean, at least by dysfunctional. I like to kind of define this by two things, like ability to have intimacy and closeness, connection, and ability to resolve conflict, so differences. So similarities and differences, basically. That there's a balance, there's resolution, that there is a relationship that's healthy for both individuals, you know? So like for this person and this person, it respects their individual health and the health of the group, the system, the relationship. So that's how I define dysfunction and function, right? Is this person developing at the rate they should? Are they reaching milestones? Are they having healthy other relationships? You know, so we're saying that if this sister is estranged, there's definitely some internal dysfunction there as a result of the system. And that's probably what she's working on in therapy. That's probably part of why she's estranged. She's like, I just need a break from these people. Okay. But for him, who's still in a relationship, internally, we know there's something internally there too. Okay. Now, you cannot talk about sibling dysfunction without talking about system dysfunction. They're kind of one and the same. Sibling dysfunction, so internally or with each other and or in this relationship, without looking at the entire system and the leadership. There's a quote I want you to remember. Attitude, dysfunction reflects leadership. You know where this comes from? Remember the Titans. I was watching that last week, and Julius and Jerry, they were talking, they were yelling at each other. Julius was like, attitude reflects leadership. Like, I don't want to be a part of this team. I'm not acting like part of this team. Leadership sucks. So I've got to look out for myself. If my brain didn't go off then talking about this stuff, siblings, leadership, family systems. So we cannot talk about sibling dysfunction without talking about family dysfunction and parent leadership dysfunction. Everything comes from the top in family systems. Everything. Okay? It's ignorant. It's ill-informed to talk about sibling dysfunction in any other way. It's just absolutely ridiculous to like basically ignore the context of their life. They're two fish growing up in water, salt water, fresh water, whatever, and they don't know it. Like it's all you know? So that's why it's very important to talk about. I mean, it all starts up here. Everything when we look at sibling dysfunction and then we can look at the top. Suddenly we have answers. So we're going to assume, maybe for the sake of this argument, that this person that left this comment, I think my sister has borderline personality disorder. Who is this person? I guess it's this person in the dynamic, okay? To me, if this commenter, if this sibling is not like, yeah, and it's a result, BPD actually co-occurs with PTSD. That's what people really need to know. You can't just say someone has a personality disorder, I think, in my ethical opinion, without identifying the context that it came from. If she has BPD and she's in therapy by herself and, she's like, I'm really struggling with relationships in my life. Like, yeah, like we need to look at yourself and at some point, right? Like just yourself as a system and how you're functioning in your own life. And maybe there's BPD is a way to show you the symptoms that you're having and a way to treat it, with like DBT, for example. That's the treatment for borderline is a treatment called dialectical behavioral therapy, DBT. What's her name? Marsha Linehan came up with it. She wrote a really great book on it. If you think your sister has borderline personality disorder, you should read Marsha Linehan's book. I think it's Building a Life Worth Living. I think that's the book. It's a great book. People with BPD really struggle with suicidality, by the way. So that's kind of the marker in my understanding of someone that has BPD or not, like how suicidal, how, are they? There's a lot else to say about it, but point being, we're focused on this sibling here. If you think your sister has borderline personality disorder, what I'm here to say to you is that you are just as emotionally dysfunctional on the outside or on the inside, and so is your family system. That's what I'm here to say to you. Yeah, you're just as emotionally dysfunctional. It just looks differently in you. Whereas with your sibling, BPD shows up as like, it can be insecure attachment, black and white thinking. Like, I love you, I hate you, I love you, I hate you. There's books on this, like walking on eggshells. Someone with BPD. I hate looking at it like this. I don't like looking at it like this. Like, this person, saying that someone has a personality disorder can be another way of scapegoating them. And you may be Mr. Perfect, right? Like, are you Mr. Perfect? Do you get good grades? You do the right thing? You, in every argument that your parents have with your sister, are you like, I understand their point of view. She's just being unruly. Like, if she's just so emotional. Is that what you're doing? How did you get to this conclusion? Is this from a compassionate place of like, we were raised in a very emotionally abusive environment and emotionally neglectful environment, and she has suffered because of that, and she's taking it out on me. Maybe there's some sibling abuse there too because of it. Like, which would be fair. Sibling abuse is not talked about. And again, guess what? That comes from the top here. That comes from a lack of parenting or an over-parenting or something. It's a system issue, okay? So where is your heart in this situation? Because again, we're looking at you too. If you want to look at your sister, we're going to look at you too. And if we're going to look at your sister and you, Siblings 101 is we're looking at the whole system, and we're looking at your parents as well. And so I'm a marriage and family person. Like, I'm a micro system person. You can look at the family system too. People love to do this. This sibling that's saying this too loves to do this. Mom and dad are doing the best they could. They were also hurt growing up. That's like the it's not funny, but it's that's the paradox. That's the contradiction that this person is struggling with a lot of times, is like, I have all this compassion and understanding for my parents, but my sister treated me like shit, and I also see how she's dysfunctional in her life. And so even though I have no anger towards my parents, I have it all right here because she's the one that treated me terribly. And so on the outside, people can really buy into this, and not because they're functional on the outside. Maybe they graduated college, they got good grades, they, were on a sports team, whatever. It may be easy to look at the sister and like diagnose her in a scapegoating way. No. You need to realize too, you're scapegoating. Scapegoating at its core, at its emotional core, is an inability to manage the discomfort of your own stuff and the system stuff. So you obviously, if you see your parents, they did the best they could, and you're scapegoating your sister as having a personality disorder, that's black or white also. And that shows your own black and white thinking. Well, yeah, no, but I understand my parents. I understand where they're coming from. They treat her with respect. They listen to her. And she misbehaves. She's always had these issues. She's always been emotional. She's always been, bad with money. That, I'm looking at this person saying, hold on a second. So again, we don't know where this commenter was coming from. And that's why this isn't therapy. You know what I mean? That's why I'm not like, I don't know this person. I'm making some inferences and just like talking this through in different scenarios, right? Like, I want to talk about the sentiment of this. And if you feel this sentiment, what you're possibly missing. Now, this could also be a very compassionate way to look at their sister. Like, their sister has hurt me, and my sister, like, she doesn't mean it, like there's something wrong here. And so I'm able to see my sister and love her and see the goodness in her and see this personality disorder as something separate than her. So maybe it is a compassionate thing. The video this was set on, back to the beginning, was on if is everyone in the family dysfunctional if one person is. So let's take this another view, that this person is the one estranged. Like, where they're owning their stuff. They see the system and they're saying, like, I am looking at my sister because everyone's dysfunctional. It's not just me. It's not just me and my, substance use issues. It's not just me. I have an eating disorder. And I know that, and I'm working on it. And I look at my sister, and maybe she's functional in a lot of ways, but emotionally she's not. In relationships, she's not. So maybe that's where they're coming from when they say this. I don't know. You're right. I don't know. That's why we need to look at this as like the sign of emotional intelligence, the sign of maturity is holding kind of two things at the same time. Like that the system's messed up. I'm messed up. And this is a really sad result of it. Maybe. Now, okay, so Siblings 101, sibling issues are a result of family dysfunction, and more specifically, parent dysfunction. What this means in adulthood is not necessarily that there's no hope, Because when you were kids, it's really hard to focus on the sibling relationship. It's really hard. Maybe you're treated differently by your parents. Like, it's hard to have the maturity of like, this is our parents' problem. And we're actually on the same team here. Like, siblings are actually on the same team. In a video I did, I talked about how like a sign of family dysfunction is if siblings don't get along. If you hate your sibling, that's a sign of family dysfunction. If you identify with your parents, that's a sign of over your sibling. That's a sign of family dysfunction. And honestly, to me, going one step further, that's a sign of emotional neglect and emotional abuse. Meaning that your parents should be leaving you out of issues. They should be championing you. They should be if you have an issue with your sibling growing up, what's the right thing for your parents to do? Your parents need to sit with you, ask you what you feel, ask you what's happened, ask you what you feel, ask you what you need and what you want, and help you communicate that with your sibling. That's their job with you, is to not advocate for the sibling, to not only take your side. When I see this, I'm like, did your parents drop that comment? Are your parents acting so helpless over your sister's behavior? Because they're not. That's absurd. It's absurd. Parents have all the power here. It's absurd if you think that your parents are like helpless and powerless over your sister's moods. That's not right. That's not the correct way to frame it. Now, there may be some like truth to it of like they really seem that way, but this is where the dysfunction comes because you're identifying with them just as people, as if they're another sibling, or as if you're the parent. You're not the parent. You don't know what it's like to be the parent. This is growing up I'm talking about. You don't know what it's like to be the parent. So you cannot possibly identify with their position because you don't know it. Maybe inside if they like maybe how they feel inside, but we need to look at the system and the structure, not just the insides of people. We need to look at the system and the structure. That's how things actually change. If your sister is borderline and she's raging at you, and that's happening, and you don't know why, and your parents aren't intervening, or they're either excusing it or blaming you, or they're blaming her and they're saying like, oh my gosh, like she's so out of control, like whatever it is, that's a system issue. That's a system issue. So we need to look at the context here. So all to say is like, there's abuse happening here. I think one of the biggest misconceptions about people in abusive contexts is they think they have to look like a victim. They think they have to feel really scared. You know, they think of fear as this monster under the bed, or like teeth chattering fear. They think that's what it looks like for them to be in an abusive situation. Abuse is defined by two things in my world, okay? The position of power, position that someone is in, and two, the impact of it. So like your sister in this situation, anything really toxic that the parents do to their kids, like they yell at their kids, that is abusive behavior. It is. Because they're in the position of power, and yelling at their kid destroys them internally, okay? So to me, that's abusive behavior. Now, when we talk about abuse as like a dynamic, the two things that are already there for there to be an abusive dynamic. The kid's not going to be like, hey, mom, stop yelling, or there will be consequences if you don't. Like there's no power there. Okay, that's what makes this an abusive behavior. Now, if you're a parent and you're here and you realize that you yell at your kids and you're learning and you're actually changing, you're coming out of that. You're not an abuser. I don't label people like that in general. I think, though, the people that are abusive and that honestly fall into that category, it's not just people that are like legally abusing, like where they're intentionally trying to destroy. I think that's going to change in the law sooner rather than later, that like there has to be intent for it to be abuse. Abuse is like a term described in a lot of different ways, morally, ethically. It's not just abuse if it's legally abuse. Like, good Lord, okay? Because the law is not necessarily reflective of moral code, people. Like, just because it's law doesn't mean it's like the laws of the universe. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's just not true. So we need to like separate what's legally abuse from what does a lot of damage from positions in particular. So all to say is like, when we're talking about emotional abuse and neglect, that's certainly here if this person is saying this. So why that matters for this sibling is they need to stop repeating this when they're in their own families. Because what can happen if you're here and you think, oh, my sister has borderline personality disorder, anything emotional might scare you, or you're going to feel really judgmental about. If someone is like black or white, you're like, borderline vibes, like staying away from you. That's a threat to me. And anyone that's emotional, anyone that breaks down, anyone that rages, you think you're going to pathologize them. So that's where you've got to get that unstuck in your own mind. Like, what happens if I'm emotional? What happens if I rage? What happens if I do this? Does that mean the same thing about me? And so that's why we have to check ourselves. That's why I'm like, this commenter, we need to check yourself, buddy, sister. I don't know. With all love, of course. I'm here to help you learn. We're restoring relationships. I'm taking you to school, okay? We're reshaping things first. All right? So there's that. Now, let's talk about sibling abuse. Let's talk about that fun subject, okay? Remember when I said sibling abuse, it all comes back to the parents? Well, hold on. I'm going to write that down. Sibling abuse. I need to bring that back later. What I was going to say is that, like, just because this was your dynamic when you were younger doesn't mean that as an adult, this has to be your dynamic, that the family system has to be fixed for you to have a relationship with your sibling. That's not true. You can certainly, I encourage people. In fact, if you listen to the live call I had with Holly last Tuesday, it's on my Facebook, it's on my platforms. Last Tuesday, what's the date? last Tuesday. I think it was the 20th. Look at the call last week on the 20th about Holly, who was asking about her sister. So I encourage people, when they're adults in particular, to focus on individual relationships with your parents even. You don't have to worry about them as a system anymore, because you're not in the system anymore. You're starting your own system, and you're not ideally living with them or dependent on them. Now, I realize with childcare, financially and financially that may be another thing, but I'm talking again about the insides of things. Ideally, you're at a place where you're separate from them. In that way, you're detached. You're worried about your own life. So all to say is that as an adult, like that's kind of my rule as for like adult siblings. Worry about individual relationships and make room for the context. Like you guys had different childhood experiences. Ideally, you can talk about them in a way that is recognizing of that they had a different experience. It's my belief system that taking this a step further, if adult siblings in adulthood can come together about and deal and heal their own issues in the context of the family, this kind of inverses, and they can kind of go for the parents and be truthful with love about the parents' issues. So I think when it comes to healing a family system, siblings coming together is like the solution in adulthood. That's my opinion. So just saying. But yeah, focusing on individual relationships. And the beauty of, this is the hard part about family, is that it's not like forever, in the sense that there's always hope, because there's not necessarily always hope. That's kind of what we have to learn in detachment, is like, there may not be. But if that's in your heart, but that's kind of why the grief doesn't go away, because they're family in that sense. And it's that like primitive, primal, formative is the word I need. That's why. So all to say is that life is long and things do change. And if you're in your 20s and 30s and your siblings, you may be in different phases of life too. That's a factor. So, a lot of times what I've seen is when people have their own families, like when they're having to deal with their own issues, if this person is having to deal with their own issues now, they may be like, oh, I'm just as screwed up internally as my sister, who I previously judged and scapegoated. Oops. Okay, changing that now. Maybe then there's hope for us to have a relationship, because now I can empathize more. Maybe not, though, because maybe this person is more dangerous or threatening to them. So you get to decide that, as always. All right, let's go to sibling abuse. And I think this is where we'll probably end today. But sibling abuse is, I've mentioned a couple times today, it's a result of the family system, of the issues in leadership and parenting. But sibling abuse is tricky because, again, it's the parent's fault for letting it happen. It's always the parent's fault for creating an environment where that can happen. And how do we heal from this? So there are power imbalances between siblings. And that's a really tricky thing. Like when there's sibling abuse, there's, what's the word? What is it? Just like child. Like there's sexual abuse that happens between siblings. Like this is, that's real. And that's not necessarily, we'll say, like the parents' fault and that they may have known and didn't do anything about it. Like that's not what I'm saying. I just mean like when there's abuse on that level, it's a result of, in my opinion, partly and mainly internalized emotions, internalized feelings, entitlement issues, beliefs issues that are passed down, that the child acts upon. Now, if we're talking about issues of abuse separate from what parents know about, I really do think that there's always emotional neglect and abuse at play there, because the psychology of it, of someone staying quiet, the psychology of how long it lasts, like that kind of thing, that does come back to parents. I think in healthy family dynamics, things are talked about, feelings, urges, needs, like nothing is off limits in family dynamics. So in healthy families. So that's why I think this is a really tricky thing. And the more I'm talking about this, the more I'm like, a million scenarios are coming to my mind where this is tricky. But I think that like to offset, to prevent this, we need to be talking about parents, leadership, making everything okay to talk about. Every urge, every impulse, every need, every like unwanted behavior needs to have a safe space in the home with a parent. One or both parents. Just takes one parent to be healthy, to make a difference. We talk about why does one child turn out to be healthier and the other one not? It takes one witness to your experience. It takes one witness. That can be the difference between one child that's dysfunctional and one child that's functional, is the witness. So yeah, sibling abuse is tricky. I'm not like, as I'm sitting with this, I'm like, are the words coming to me? Yeah, it's really tricky. I mean, we just think about like general things, like an older brother, 4 years older, teasing, humiliating, beating up on a younger sister. That's like such a ha-ha funny thing. That can totally erode the sister's self-esteem. That can like model abuse in her relationships. The dad and mom may be doing everything they can in terms of their own individual relationship with her to build her self-esteem. But if they just think it's like part of sibling dynamics for the older brother to be like constantly making fun of the younger sister, that's not okay. Like an environment of teasing is not okay. It's something called pseudo hostility, actually, where there's not real conflict resolution. There's not real intimacy because everything's a joke. It's like sarcasm. Like it's not a healthy environment. Not to say the behaviors every now and then are emotionally abusive, but those can only exist if there's safety and love. And I want parents to ask themselves, like, not what you think it is. What do you think the kids are experiencing? What do you think your daughter feels when that happens and you're watching it and you think it's funny? Or you reinforce it in some way. And you're not curious about what's happening in the older brother emotionally. Like, whoa. Like, I'm going to separate you two now, but let's like really talk. I notice you're doing this with your sister a lot. What the hell is going on? Like, I can't allow that. I love you. I can't allow that to her. It's going to damage her. And what's happening inside? What's going on? Like, is something happening at school? And if it's like the kid doesn't tell you or the kid's resistant to that, there's some work to do in that relationship between you and the kid, that they feel safe enough with you to talk to you about stuff. So there's something bigger happening. It's not normal for just an older brother to be like railing on their younger sister all the time. Like, that's not okay. That's sibling abuse. Stop letting it happen. It's not funny. It's not charming. It's not part of every family. That's not true. If your daughter is showing signs of like anxiety or self-esteem issues, like look at that. Look at it. Not okay. So we need to remember that when there's a biological, physical factor, like if the brother's bigger, stronger, even older sister's 4 or 5 years older and she's just getting on her younger brother, there's a physical element. That's a power differential. And yes, they need to be held to a different standard, but not like, hey, you're older, you know better, stop doing it because you should know better. None of the shoulds about it. It just means they need your extra support to manage their feelings and to empathize with the other. Like, how do you think that affects them when you do that? Because you're not like advocating for the younger sibling directly. You're helping the older sibling come to that on their own, So yeah, I don't know. I imagine that the more I think about this, the more this stuff sits with me, the more I'll come up with it. So to kind of summarize today, Siblings 101. Sibling issues. Always go back to family issues, starting with parent issues. How are parents modeling conflict? How are parents modeling closeness? Are parents just being super weird sexually with each other? I swear I see this all the time. Parents, it's like, who think it's so funny to like slap their wife like on the butt and be sexual in front of the kids. Like, stop. God. So anyway, is that the only way that parents are showing closeness with each other, is this weird romantic sexual stuff? That's like really confusing to the kids. Like, stop doing that, please. And so sibling issues are always parent issues, okay? Back to this comment. If you think your sister has borderline personality disorder, where are you coming from with that? What do you think? Are you understanding the emotional abuse and neglect in your own mind? Are you understanding the abuse of power that happened in your own mind? Are you siding with your parents over your sister? That's a problem. That shows your own dysfunction, because you and your sister are actually in the same position, and you really don't know what it's like to be a parent to your sister, you know? So let's check that a little bit. In love, said in love, let's check that. Yes, estrangement means family dysfunction. Yes. The way to heal in adulthood with siblings in general, is to focus on individual relationships. And a sign of growth and maturity for you, if you have a like more dysfunctional sibling on the outside, is to have compassion and boundaries. You can have boundaries if your sibling's dysfunctional. We don't mean like go back and repair as if your kids, you know, like they may be in a different place in life. The other thing is like maybe have patience. Like, I don't know, have patience as if you're like holding your breath, but like know that things change in life. Life is long. Life is long. We need to remember that. Life is long. And you're allowed to focus on yourself. If you're the sibling, you know, I've talked about this in my other videos. Go watch that call with Holly. You can focus on yourself. You actually can. If you're feeling guilty and burdened and responsible, you're an adult now, you can focus on yourself. It's okay. You were never responsible for your family. So that's Siblings 101. That's this comment. Let me know your comments. Next week, I'm doing this Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Ideally, I'm going to have a chance like in every stream to answer your own questions and to like engage with you more about this. I want this to be a comprehensive, like additive thing that we're building together, where I can point to like, hey, go watch this episode and then this one and then this one and then this one. And it's all kind of building on itself. Ask questions. I've gotten some great questions from people at this point, bridging different things I've talked about. So engage with me. I want to meet you where you are. Remember, this is not a replacement for therapy. This is supplemental, because I don't know you, right? Like as it showed with this comment, I don't know this person. So we're just guessing, and take what you like and leave the rest. And I guess last couple things. Yeah. Subscribe, so that you get notified if you care, if you want. And you can also subscribe to like other things I'm doing. Like I'm releasing a new class on defensiveness on my website in the next, I would say, month. If you want to get notified, you can also subscribe to my list on my website, codependencykate.com. But yeah, this was fun. Hopefully, yeah, this will be on Instagram, I think by next week. We're going to see. We're trying to use less definitive declarative terms because things change. So we're going to work on that. And if you see that, that's a thumbs up. But stay studious. Stay a student of your life. That's all we're here to do. And whether you take it from me or someone else, things will click eventually. You're doing the work. You're doing great.